Good evening. This is TrendProof News for August 26th. Tonight, Canada moves toward broad counter-tariffs on U.S. imports. Iran and Oman outline a temporary shipping route through the Strait of Hormuz. China and India will continue border dialogue. We will separate confirmed details from what remains unsettled. First, Canada's announced counter-tariffs. The rates and implementation date are set out.
Canada has announced a new round of counter-tariffs on U.S. goods after trade talks with Washington broke down. The key date is September 8th. According to Canada's Department of Finance, the measures will apply rates of 15, 25, or 50% to products imported from the United States. The stated objective is to match corresponding U.S. tariff levies, rate for rate and dollar for dollar. The government puts the value of the targeted U.S. imports at $27.6 billion. That is the same value it cites for Canadian goods, subject to the new U.S. 50% tariff that took effect on August 22nd. Canada says it suspended negotiations rather than accept terms it described as not being in the country's interest. That is the official Canadian rationale. The U.S. position and any additional response remain variables to watch. The affected product list is broad. Canada names steel, dairy, appliances, agricultural equipment, pulp and paper, and electronics among the sectors covered. The government says some steel and aluminum products, furniture, and clothing will face 50% counter-tariffs. Appliances, cheese, fish and seafood, and some derivative steel and aluminum products are among the goods listed at 25%. Other products are set at 15%. The Canadian announcement also includes a support package for workers and businesses affected by the dispute. It totals 7.5 billion Canadian dollars in new and enhanced measures. The package includes regional support for smaller businesses, liquidity programs, investment support for tariff-affected companies, and worker or employer assistance. Reuters reported that the federal lender BDC is expected to offer part of that support through interest-free loans for eligible affected firms. For viewers, the important distinction is between an announced trade measure and its eventual effect. The counter-tariffs are not described as taking effect today. September 8th is the announced start date. Businesses will still need to assess product classifications, exemptions, supplier changes, contracts, and retail pricing. TrendProof will track 3 practical milestones: implementation of the list, possible further action from Washington, and evidence of price.
Next, the Strait of Hormuz. Iran and Oman have outlined a temporary shipping corridor while risks remain high.
Iran and Oman say their top diplomats have discussed a phased approach to managing ship traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. The proposed framework includes a joint temporary navigational corridor and work to clear mines from the waterway. The strait remains a major global shipping choke point, and the proposal follows months of disruption and heightened security risk. The talks took place in Tehran between Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and Omani Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi. The two governments said technical negotiations would continue toward a permanent arrangement. An Iranian deputy foreign minister said the temporary route would use a specific pattern through Iranian and Omani waters, and that the parties would hold further discussions over roughly 30 to 60 days. That is a proposal and negotiating timeline, not a completed permanent reopening. The immediate risk to shipping was underscored by another reported tanker incident. The Associated Press reported that a strike off Oman's eastern coast disabled an oil tanker's engine. The United Kingdom Maritime Trade Organization said the crew were reported safe. AP said there were no immediate reports of environmental impact. No immediate claim of responsibility was reported in the account. The practical significance of the corridor proposal is navigation. Before the current conflict, a significant share of globally traded oil transited the strait. A route that shipping companies and governments consider workable could reduce disruption, but the plan still faces technical, political, and security questions. AP also reported that it was unknown whether the United States would accept the emerging arrangement. The correct reading of today's announcement is cautious.
Iran and Oman have announced an understanding on a temporary framework, not a fully restored and universally accepted shipping regime. The next developments to watch are technical negotiations, mine clearance activity, commercial vessel traffic, insurance conditions, and responses from other governments. Archived naval footage in this report is supplied for geographic and operational context only.
Finally, India and China will continue boundary talks. No final settlement has been announced.
China and India have agreed to continue dialogue and seek what they called a fair, reasonable, and mutually acceptable settlement of their boundary issue. The announcement followed talks in Beijing between Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi and India's National Security Advisor, Ajit Doval. The meeting was another formal step in a long-running process, not a final agreement on the disputed Himalayan border. Reuters reported that the two sides held what China described as comprehensive, in-depth, friendly, and candid discussions on border affairs and wider bilateral relations. The Indian embassy in China said the meeting reviewed bilateral ties and discussed ways to expand cooperation while maintaining stability and peace in border areas. Those statements point to continued diplomatic engagement, but they do not erase the underlying dispute. The border is roughly 3,800 kilometers long, largely undemarcated, and remains disputed in sections of the Himalayas. Relations gradually improved after the deadly 2020 clash and a lengthy military standoff, but progress has been uneven. Reuters noted that a disengagement agreement was reached in October 2024, while more recent border-related disagreements have still prompted sharp diplomatic exchanges. A significant detail from this round is the plan for the next meeting. China's statement said the next round of talks would be held in India in 2027. That is an indication that the negotiation channel remains open. It is not a timetable for a settlement. In boundary diplomacy, the difference between resuming dialogue, agreeing on principles, and finalizing a line on a map is substantial. For now, the verified development is the commitment to continue talks. The next questions are whether the two sides can convert diplomatic language into practical arrangements, whether conditions on the ground remain stable, and whether wider political cooperation supports or complicates the boundary process. The meeting visuals in this report are explanatory editorial material. The factual claim. Across these three stories, the common theme is implementation. Canada has announced counter-tariffs with a September 8th effective date, but businesses and consumers will judge the effects over time. The Strait of Hormuz proposal describes a temporary path and more negotiations, while safe commercial navigation depends on conditions that can change quickly. India and China agreed to continue dialogue, while the border itself remains unresolved. For the trade story, the relevant next checks are the final product list, any exemptions or implementation guidance, and additional action by either government. For Hormuz, watch for the announced technical negotiations, mine clearance progress, vessel traffic, and official notices to mariners. For the India-China talks, watch for statements on border management, the planned 2027 meeting, and any concrete arrangements that follow the diplomatic language. TrendProof standard is to show the date, identify the source, and state the difference between an announcement and an outcome. Real footage in this broadcast is identified as archive or file material when it does not show the current event. Generated explanatory visuals support the reporting but are disclosed in the review metadata and platform altered content declaration. A final note on verification. For the Canada Trade Report, the primary source is the Department of Finance Canada's August 25th release. It states both the proposed September 8th effective date and the 15, 25, and 50% counter-tariff rates. Reuters independently reported the scope of the package and the planned business support. For the Strait of Hormuz report, the Iran-Oman framework is described in a joint announcement and independently reported by the Associated Press. The key limitation is clear. Negotiations and safety conditions are still evolving. The reported tanker incident should not be treated as proof that a permanent shipping arrangement is in place. For India-China dialogue, The verified point is that senior officials met in Beijing and agreed to continue searching for a mutually acceptable settlement. Reuters reported that the next round is planned for India in 2027. That is a diplomatic process marker, not a final demarcation agreement. Source dates matter. A port clip, ship clip, or diplomatic visual may provide context, but it cannot replace the official document or current reporting. TrendProof identifies archive footage separately and keeps the distinction between what is confirmed today, what is proposed.
Those are the verified developments we are tracking. Consult original agencies for live information. I'm your TrendProof anchor. Thank you for watching.